As a creative aspect, TV is one of the best things that we do as a species. Along with music and film and books, they bring out the best creative of all of us. They entertain and they bring so much joy to many. They invoke emotion and enable us to feel things that we bury sometimes deep down. That's what this podcast is for. Welcome to A Million Little TV Shows. This is what I call the breakdown while I break down. Each week I will go through a different TV show, a different season of that TV show, and different episodes of that show. And I will break down not only emotions, but I will break down stories from my life, and let you know why these TV shows mean so much to me, and why I believe that they are some of the most important shows out there. This podcast is here to highlight a lot of smaller TV shows, or TV shows that don't really get a platform, because we know of a bunch of TV shows that get a multitude of different podcasts. Ted Lasso, Game of Thrones, The Office, they've all got several podcasts out there analysing all types of different things. But there's not many out there for the little guy, and that's what I'm trying to highlight. So each week I will go through a different show, different seasons, different episodes, and I will go across all different kinds of genres and different countries to bring you what I believe is some of the best TV out there. So I'm glad you're here with me. I'm glad you're here for this journey. And if you've watched the shows before and you wanted to come here and get an analysis on them and have someone go through them and pick out bits that you might have enjoyed, then I'm glad you are here. If, however, you have never watched the show and you just want to come and have someone talk in your ear about different TV shows, I'm glad you are here. But I hope that it inspires some people to go and seek out these TV shows. They deserve to be watched. They were made with love and care, and they are the same as this podcast, made with love and care. I am your host, Mike, and I will take you through every adventure, every horror, every piece of drama, and I hope that you enjoy the show. Hello there, and welcome back to this A Million Little TV Shows podcast. This is now episode 3 of season 9, and I'm really excited to get back into this today because today we are covering Ginny and Georgia. Obviously, as you know, this came out 2 weeks ago, and the first episode that I did on this was live, pretty much, and I'm really pleased with the result of it. I think it was a good episode, and I'm just going to carry on with that today, because Ginny and Georgia's fucking great. So, obviously, if you haven't listened to Ginny and Georgia Part 1, go listen to that, and obviously, if you haven't seen the series, there are going to be a hell of a lot of spoilers. So, go watch the series, go listen to Part 1 if you obviously want to listen to it. I'm not going to push you, but I hope you do, because I enjoy doing this podcast, and especially when it's something so fresh as Ginny and Georgia, it's great. I think it's just time that we get into this. This is Ginny and Georgia, Season 3, Episodes 4 to 7. Episode 4, The Bitch is Back. So let's start with Ginny, since she's got access to the outside world, unlike Georgia. But where we're actually going to start is Marcus. He ends up waking up in a playground and manages to stagger home. It's the night after the big party that they all had at the school. And he's out of it. He's dishevelled. He looks like trash. Although, during this episode, I kept looking at him thinking, do you know who he would be incredible lookalike for? Johnny Depp. He looks like a very young Johnny Depp. Like, I'm talking 21 Jump Street, Nightmare on Elm Street, Johnny Depp. So, I think he'd be good if there was a biography about Johnny Depp as playing him. But anyway, that's just my thoughts. So, when he gets home, he finds the family all sat around, and he manages to slink off upstairs. Turns out the night before he was meant to be going home with Max, and didn't, because he ended up going out partying, on his own by the looks of things. Max makes something up for him, and basically just shows that she's still got his back. Even though, with everything that's gone on, he's been a total mess recently. And basically, she just said that Marcus stayed at Silver's. Ginny, however, is reeling from the night before because, as we know, she was all excited about it. Then Marcus turned up, she got even more excited, and they ended up kissing. You could see on Marcus's face the trepidation or the worry that he was going to let everyone down again. And especially at this point, Ginny. So the next morning, we can start to understand why he's in the state that he's in. But not only that, the reason that Ginny is so happy is because she thinks they're going to get back together. There is no obvious indication of this, but they kissed, so why wouldn't they be getting back together? There's obviously still feelings there. However, she isn't counting her chickens before they hatch, which is I suppose a good thing, but there are a lot of mixed signals going on here, and it's just not fair on her, especially with everything else that's going on. When Max actually speaks to her brother, he tells her that he doesn't remember what happened that night. He remembers going to the dance because of his mother and Ginny and Max, but he doesn't actually remember any of the dance. He doesn't know where he ended up or how he got there, and essentially he was so blackout when he actually got to the school, he doesn't know anything. So while Ginny's trying to get hold of him, she is essentially being ignored. He is really trying not to make any more mistakes. He knows, obviously, that they've kissed, but he just feels lost by all of this. The next day in school, Ginny gets pulled into the office because it turns out that the night before, the class of the AP English teacher, who was Ginny's teacher in the previous series, has ended up having his classroom trashed. Now, of course, we know that Abby and Marcus did it because they went in there and they were drinking. We saw them in the hall earlier on that episode. But because this guy's got such a bee in his bonnet about Ginny, he thinks it's her straight away. Eventually, Marcus comes into the office and tells them exactly what happened. He confesses to everything and ends up getting suspended for a month, which of course is going to affect the whole family. And so Ginny goes over to his house. She goes and speaks to him, asks him what the hell is going on, and he essentially says, look, I'm not in love with you anymore. We can see that he isn't right. We've seen it for 3 seasons now that there is something really plaguing this kid. Obviously, like I've said before, I think it's over a 6-month period by now, but still, 6 months on and he's not actually trying to help himself. I get a real worry about Marcus in this show, and I've got a real worry about what's coming for him as a character, and I just hope I'm wrong on this one. I'm sure you can all infer what I'm saying right now. But anyway, after Ginny leaves, after being told that Marcus doesn't love her anymore, Max comes in and he makes his excuses, and she knows different. She knows how he feels. She knows that he's done this for Ginny, but it's going to backfire on him and really fucking quickly. Because as we know, Ginny is now doing these poetry classes. When she gets in there, she is told that she needs to do a poem about love. Obviously at this point, A, it's probably going to be the best one in the class because Ginny's a really good writer anyway, but B, love and heartbreak, they're the perfect mix for poems. And so I have no doubt that Ginny's going to absolutely nail this, but she is feeling low at this point. However, she speaks to the kid from her class, Wolf. And yeah, that is his name. And while she speaks to him, she tells him, look, I know you asked me out. I am ready to go out on a date with you. And that night they end up going out for boba, which, look, I love boba. It's fucking great. If you haven't drunk boba, just try it. Just try a nice fruit punch or something like that. It's really good. But while they're having a nice time, flirting. Ginny's kind of getting her groove back. She seems to be having a good time, but we've got to wonder whether it is in spite of Marcus or to spite Marcus. But anyway, the date goes well, and when she ends up telling the group about all of this, obviously the first person whose face goes is Max, because Max knows nothing about this until the point when Brayshaw comes over and asks about this guy from the class. Everyone else seems excited about it apart from Max. Of course, she has 2 reasons to be the way that she is. One being Marcus, but the other is because she is really selfish. And she is literally just looking at Ginny as if she is her pet. And her pet did something against her and now she is bitter and angry about it. And obviously we know that Austin is having a bad time at school because the kid whose dad died is literally sat across from him throughout his lessons. And he just seems to want the world to open up and swallow him because he cannot take it. So when he hears about what Marcus did and how he got suspended for a month, and he hopes that maybe if he did the same, he could get the exact punishment that Marcus got, and therefore he wouldn't have to deal with this problem for a month. Obviously, putting problems off like that isn't going to help anybody. And especially when you're in school, and hopefully that no one's listening to this who is in school, but if you have kids that are in school and they're acting up like this, maybe start having a chat with them. I don't have kids, so what the fuck would I know? I'm just an observer. And then we'll come on to Georgia. So Georgia knows that she has really fucked up with this whole getting arrested thing, and she wants to make it up to Paul. She knows that he's going through it at the minute because obviously there is this bill to come through the council, and if it goes through, it's going to allow all big businesses to come into town and potentially ruin the smaller businesses in the area. And so at a council meeting which is broadcast live throughout the town, they end up having this debate about these franchises coming in. The guy who is essentially opposing what Paul is doing in town by keeping the small businesses afloat tells of the frustrations of having big businesses outside the town, so he has to drive like 15 minutes to get a Starbucks or get a McDonald's or whatever. But the first person that comes up is Joe, and Joe essentially says, if those businesses get into town, businesses like mine, where it's serving farm fresh produce, is going to be a thing of the past, and the town is going to go like everywhere else. And quite frankly, it will be a sad situation for the town. And of course, this gives Georgia an idea. She knows that she can't go anywhere to help out the council, but she can do something from her own home. And so she decides to do her own festival, where essentially they have businesses come out onto the lawns of the people of the town, and people can sample the produce that they produce, which is a great idea. Of course, Georgia, however, hasn't spoken to Joe in such a long time that she has decided to put this all together so Joe will come over. She draws lots and actually finds that Blue Farm, Joe's business, is going to be displaying their business outside her house. So she's orchestrated everything. She's manipulated the town as per usual and put this in place. And while she's there, she also ends up working the crowd. A massive reason for this is because Georgia's trial is about to start. She's told that people in the town are going to be coming through and judging her, basically. They're going to be on the jury. And while she's speaking to people, she's getting information about them. So when jury selection comes, she actually helps her lawyer pick the jury because she knows enough about them to use things against them. If they're the kind of person that she would want or the prosecution would want, she has them on the jury. However, if she knows a little bit more information about these people that would go against her, she makes sure that they are let go. So as I say, constantly manipulating the system. Eventually she ends up talking to Joe, and Joe tells her, look, you know how I feel about you. You know that I've got a thing for you and have done for a while, and you manipulate me. You use it against me and you play me off. And this is never going to happen for us. And all that happens is I end up just getting hurt. So maybe you need to stop doing that because it's really not helpful for him. And it must suck to be Joe in this situation where he knows that she will manipulate him at every turn. And it's just such a shame because he's such a good guy. As for Paul during this episode, he is shaken from the news that Nick gave him in the last episode. He knows that she has killed 2 previous husbands and he is worried about what's going to happen. But Paul isn't great about hiding his emotions. And so the more Georgia pushes towards being near him, the more he wants to step back. Eventually he realises that he can't get away with doing that for too long. And so the night before jury selection, he ends up sleeping with Georgia. Of course, Georgia straight away thinks that they're back on track. That's all it was. It was just the stress of the town meeting and now he's back. However, when the trial actually starts, she tries to get a smile from him and he is stone-faced. He refuses to acknowledge her. And so now we're going to get into the trial. And straight away we are hit with a bombshell when Gabriel, Nikki's ex-boyfriend, the private investigator that was looking into Georgia's case, gets on the stand. He is the first witness. And before any real questions can be asked, he tells the court that he believes Georgia is a serial killer. Episode 5, boom goes the dynamite. And we are really fucking ramped up now. So we pick up exactly where we left off, with the fact that Gabriel had given his assessment of who Georgia is. And of course everybody in town is shocked by this. And it starts to spread throughout the town like wildfire. The testimony that's been given hasn't really been sort of assessed properly. It is allowed to take place and the judge is going to decide on what happens next and whether Gabriel's testimony is admissible or not, but the judge wants to hear it first. And so he tells them all about Georgia's past, which of course is coming as a shock to everyone. Zion is there, he can't believe what's going on. Paul is there, and obviously he can't. At this point, there is barely 10 people in the whole courtroom. Georgia is sent home and they wrap up for the day. But like I say, this is spreading around the town like wildfire. and it has already appeared on the cable network in the town. So basically local access news has been able to promote this story, so everyone in town knows. The lawyer has to go away and rethink about his strategy and what's going to happen next. He essentially tells them things probably will get worse, but he knows that he can win this trial, and he knows that he can discredit what Gabriel has said. He just needs to look into who this character is more. Even though Georgia literally said to him in the last episode, he cannot be there because he is someone who has a vendetta against me. The lawyer didn't even look into it. But now he's got to. Due to everything that's going on around Georgia, obviously Zion is concerned for Ginny. However, Gil is also concerned for his son, Austin. He goes and speaks to Zion, and those two have never really gotten along. But right now, their concern for their kids is the thing that is bringing them together. However, Zion says, look, as much as I'm concerned about Ginny, I trust Georgia, and I'm not going to do anything that is going to jeopardize them being together. Obviously, Gil wants access to his son and wants to take him full time. I mean, I'm not sure how Gil would end up with Austin, but especially with his criminal record, but hey ho. I suppose since it was fraud and not, I don't know, GBH or ABH or child endangerment, I suppose he could get away with it. But Zion essentially tells him to sling his hook because he doesn't want anything to do with what he's selling. But Zion knows that he needs to investigate more into what the hell's going on because Ginny must have known all of this. And so he keeps trying to call her. But right now, Ginny is only focused on one person, and that is her mother. Paul, however, at this point is just trying to distance himself from the whole thing. He knows that at some point this is going to fall back on the mayor's office, and he also knows that he needs to make a statement. He's already made a statement when Georgia got arrested, and now he's probably going to have to follow up, especially since this is going to be all over the news. And this is going to be the talk of the town for the next couple of days. Although they don't know how bad this is going to get. But we start to get an indication of this when Ginny is accosted at school by a reporter. Now, I think stalking a kid to school is pretty fucking sick, and any reporter that does anything like that is abhorrent. I don't think you should be approaching children at their school, or anywhere else really. But I guess that's just the world we live in now, unfortunately. I just think it's a weird thing to do, to turn up at a school and start talking to a child. But it is what it is. So, while in school, obviously Ginny starts hearing rumours and starts seeing people chatting about her, and she freaks out when she finds out her core group have started talking about her, and even they say that they are worried about ever going round to Georgia's again. Ginny runs off. She calls Wolf and she tells him, look, what are you up to? Let's go do something. She just needs that distraction from everything that's going on right now, and she just needs to get out and be somewhere else. Now, I love the show, but I think this bit was a little bit misplaced. Because Ginny tries to avoid the reporter once more, who is still hanging outside the school. Again, fucking weird. And when she rings Wolf, and then Wolf literally turns up 2 seconds later, it's a bit of a ridiculous plotline, because you know she's got to have been stood there for at least 15 minutes, just waiting on this guy to turn up. And it would have meant that she would have had to avoid going back into school, but also avoided this reporter for 15 minutes while this reporter is sniffing around a school. Like, there were no teachers that saw Ginny just hanging outside the school. There was no way that the reporter could have seen her at all, even though she was just wandering around the car park. So, yeah, it just felt a little bit odd, that. But anyway, she goes off. She goes off with Wolf, and she ends up having a good day with him. I mean, to be fair, the guy ends up taking her to the Science Museum, and I'm sorry, but it was fucking awesome. If he'd took me, I'd have kissed him, because it was a really cool day by the looks of things. She seems to have a laugh, and she seems to get along with him so well. And it's nice to see Ginny laughing, especially with everything that's going on. I think you just sometimes need that break. You sometimes need that thing that takes you away from all the stress and the strain. Of course, let's not forget, he thinks that her name is Gia. And so, even when she gets in the car and he asks, hey, the girl that goes to your school, her mum's on trial for murder right now, right? He obviously doesn't know that that is Ginny. So for now, she can keep her anonymity and just enjoy the day. She ends up going back home, and look, again, another thing that just confused me. Why would Ginny, if she's trying to hide her identity, sit outside of her own home or just on the street of her own home, knowing that potentially Marcus or Maxine or anyone on her street would literally come past. And of course, when she's kissing Wolf, Marcus comes past. Marcus and Wolf are introduced to each other, and Wolf essentially tells Ginny that Marcus is still into her. Of course, she has to convince Marcus that her name is Gia. Thankfully, he goes along with it, and she gets away with it this time. But they were literally kissing on the street over from where she lives. So for me, just a little bit odd that she thought that not seeing someone that she knew in her own area was the right thing to think at that point. Anyway, again, I'm nitpicking. This episode was so fucking good. The tension is so high by the end of it. I'm astounded by it. Now, usually I would binge every single episode of this. I would have watched all of this by now, and I haven't yet. And I'm doing it just for the podcast, so I'm astounded by what's going on. But it's brilliant. It's really gripping. But Ginny ends up with a bunch of phone calls from her dad. And so she goes over to see him, and he asks what's been going on. He asks, is this all true about Georgia? What the hell has happened? And eventually she lets slip some things that actually happened. Zion starts to inquire about Kenny, and obviously we know about Kenny and his proclivities and the fact that he was trying to touch up Ginny while teaching her yoga, and Georgia caught him. And it was at that point that she knew she had to get rid of him, because nobody should be touching Ginny in that way. And I believe, she was 14 at the time, like bang out of order. And so Georgia wanted to get rid of him, and she did. We know that she put deadly nightshade in his drink, and he died from it. And then when the body was exhumed, it went missing, because Georgia has a criminal biker gang that she used to hang around with, and they went and dug him up. They then burned him and then sent her the ashes, and the ashes ended up becoming a firework, which she brazenly told Gabriel that she had killed her husband and he was in the fireworks that were being set off around her. But all Zion hears is the fact that Georgia definitely did something wrong. Ginny says that Georgia took care of it, but Zion now knows that this man is dead and that Georgia was just trying to protect his daughter. And you can see it on his face. He feels like he would have probably done the same, but he also knows that he would have had the moral compass not to do so. But he saw what happened with Georgia earlier on when they were teenagers, and she ended up going back and shooting her dad in the hand, or her stepdad in the hand. So Zion knows what she's like, and he always wondered whether she would actually go through with it if he hadn't have been there. And so we'll get to Georgia. She's having a rough time of it, obviously, but Paul is having a worse time. He ends up at Joe's place and he gets really drunk. He says that he can't go home to Joe, and he ends up being taken to his office, where he sleeps it off. And in the morning, Nick comes in and says, look, we need to get you out of that relationship, and you need to release a statement about everything that's going on and where the mayor's office stands in all of this. Paul gets pissed off at him, but he knows that he's right. So earlier on in the episode, when we saw that Zion was speaking to Gil, Gil told Zion exactly what had happened that day with Austin and the fact that he'd been shot. He tells Zion where the bullet hole is, and he tells him, look, you need to keep an eye on her because she's dangerous. Zion again doesn't believe him, as he has a wound in his arm to show that he'd been shot recently. But Zion still doesn't like Gil. He never has. But when he goes over to see Georgia, and there is a painting in the kitchen that is exactly at the spot where Gil said that the bullet went, Zion starts to think differently. He takes the picture down and he sees the evidence in front of his eyes. He tells Georgia that whatever she's doing is fucking stupid, and he wants to know if she did any of this, if she killed these people. This is where he tells her that he was never sure whether she would have killed her stepdad or not, before he can get any real answers, but he's feeling really mistrustful of her right now. Paul comes in and he asks for a moment with his wife. So she's now lost Zion and she's about to lose her husband, because he tells her, look, I need to be away from this situation. I'm going to go stay with my parents. And of course, Georgia can't really go after him because of the ankle monitor. Even though he's the one that gives the statement of, I am going to be leaving, he seems to still want to be chased by her for some reason. It seems like when he says that he's going, and she then tells him, look, fine, if that's what you're going to do, go. He stands there as if, oh, like, but I'm not going to go. Like, the way Paul looks at her in this episode is as if he's the one that's hurt because she's told him to go is ridiculous. He wants to go anyway, and that's his prerogative. He was going to leave anyway. So why is he getting bent out of shape? But as they go into day 2 of the trial, the press has got hold of this. Everyone has started to pick this up. And when they go back into court, it is an absolute circus. There's cameras everywhere. There is press everywhere. Paul and Zion are nowhere to be seen, and every seat is full. However, it's day 2, and it means that the defense lawyer is actually going to be able to get his chance to cross-examine Gabriel. And he does so in a very witty and intelligent manner, and he starts to win the jury back a little bit. Even Georgia is feeling a little bit more comfortable while he is doing this. He discredits everything that Gabriel said, and the judge throws out his testimony. So they're back to an even playing field again. However, now the press are involved, and the lawyer tells her as much, that this isn't going to be smooth sailing now. These guys are going to be here every day. You are the biggest news story in town. It's even got onto TV where Georgia actually came from. So people know what's going on, including her mother. So now anyone and everyone can watch this trial, and it's just going to get more and more heated as time goes on. So when they get back home, the place is essentially surrounded now. The press are everywhere, and they are just hounding Ginny, Georgia, and Austin to get statements, something, anything. Paul manages to pull them inside. He's still leaving, but he says, look, if they come on the lawn, let us know, and we will get the press away from here. However, now it's a real circus. Everywhere Ginny goes, she ends up being hounded, and the pressure just becomes way too much for her. Especially when a video of her at the slam poetry night that Zion took her to earlier on in season 2 is being shared everywhere, basically with the tagline, she knew about what her mother was doing. Ginny gets really pissed at this, and she ends up running home, and obviously her first thought is, I need to hurt myself. She attempts to, but Georgia manages to get to the door just in time, manages to stop her daughter, and then it feels like they're back to square one again with them. They're gonna go against the world, as they always have done, until Georgia gets a knock at the door. As Georgia goes to answer it, Ginny gets a call, and it's Wolf, and he tells her everything that he knows about everything that's been going on, but he seems unfazed by it all. He seems like he's just in good spirits and he likes the girl. However, the commotion downstairs means that Ginny gets cut off the call, and it's here we see Child Protective Services come into the home, and they take both Austin and Ginny. And as Georgia heads outside, because there's been a complaint against her and her mothering techniques, and people don't feel that the kids are safe in that home, she realises the people who have betrayed her. She looks into the face of both Gil and Zion. Gil we can understand because he's a smug prick, but Zion, that's the real dagger in the heart. That's the man that she's always loved, and he's betrayed her big time. And so now Austin and Ginny are split up. Georgia is on her own. Paul isn't there. Zion has taken Ginny. Austin is now with Gil, and everyone sees Georgia as a monster. Episode 6. It can't get any worse, which, as we know, it fucking can. So obviously with the kids not now being under Georgia's roof, she's struggling, which, when you've been so codependent with your kids for so long, I can imagine that it would take a toll on you. And of course, being dragged through the press, being dragged through court, it's not looking good for Georgia right now. And now with Child Protective Services taking the kids and her not being able to see them, it's really, really depressing her. And we see how bad it gets within this episode. And of course, with all this fame and notoriety that she's now got, she ends up getting haters because, of course, she does. And so when a brick comes flying through her window, it just feels like it's inevitable for her. She's shocked, but not really shocked. And of course, with her being under house arrest, she seems to be going a little bit stir crazy. So all she keeps doing is watching local access news or just any news channel, and of course, she is the talk of the town. So she's just in this constant cycle of anger about what's going on, anger towards both Gil and Zion, but then being upset that she can't see her kids, being upset about the trial that's got her into this mess, upset about Paul, and again it comes back around to being trapped in her house again. She keeps trying to get in touch with Ginny and even contacts Zion. He essentially says that she can't really be talking to Ginny right now because of the court decree. Basically, she's not allowed to speak to her own children anymore. Zion, of course, has no idea what the hell went on, especially when it comes to Gil, and especially when it comes to the shooting. We know that he's always never trusted Gil, but it doesn't really matter. Austin is now with his dad, and everyone believes that Austin is in danger, which is a good shout. We barely see Austin throughout this episode, which keeps the mystery of what's going on at Gil's home just in the back of your mind. You won't really think about it until poor Austin turns up, and then you remember who he's living with. Eventually George gets through to Ginny, manages to actually talk to her for a bit, but Ginny says that she doesn't know what's going on, and she doesn't really want her mother getting into more trouble over this. So Ginny tells her that she's going to have to stop calling. It's not fair and they need to do this by the book. Georgia knows that she's right, but continues to call, especially when she's drunk. I mean, most of this episode she's drunk. And so, because Georgia just won't take no for an answer, Ginny ends up having to block her own mother, which is obviously going to send Ginny into a spiral at this point. So this time during the trial, they end up getting Nick on the stand, and he essentially tells the jury that Georgia was with Tom when he died. It's something that Georgia had told him, and basically said that he died in peace, which we obviously know that he didn't because he suffocated. And then when Cynthia gets on the stand, she tells a very similar tale, that it was only her and the two boys and Georgia in the house, and that it was Georgia who made the discovery, and that Georgia was the one who had that time alone with Tom. So it seems like Georgia is really in a bad situation right now, because all evidence is pointing against her. Obviously, when her counsel gets up and starts to question Cynthia, he tells her, look, who would be the person who benefited from the fact that her husband was no longer there? Wouldn't be Georgia, would it? So he's doing what he needs to do. He's planting that seed of doubt that basically says that potentially Cynthia could be the one who's done this. But throughout all of this, one person that isn't mentioned is Joe. And later on we get an interaction between both Georgia and Joe, and he asks that exact question. You could have brought me into this, and you could have really done a number on me and Cynthia, and made me look guilty, maybe even her look guilty. And you didn't. Why? It seems like her connection to Joe, even after all these years, even though it was that brief moment in time, it seems that there is still something there. She has an affection for him and knows exactly how he feels about her, and therefore wasn't willing to drag him into this. The trial continues, and after weeks and weeks of deliberation and a lot of fucking talking by the sounds of things, Georgia is still no closer to actually getting this over and done with. And by this point it must be torturous for her. She's obviously not got the kids with her anymore, and it's been weeks since she can really see them. She does get to see them, but court-ordered, so someone has to be there with her. And at this point it looks like she's not going to be getting the kids back for a long time. And so she does the one thing that we thought she'd never actually do. She ends up calling Ginny's therapist. Now, of course, this woman can't really treat her. She would have a conflict of interest because she's obviously Ginny's therapist. But she can hear how desperate Georgia is, and at this point, Georgia even admits that she is thinking about harming herself, which is something we never thought we'd see from Georgia. She's always been this powerhouse, this force of nature that we knew could be unravelled, but once she set a course on something, she was going to go full tilt towards it. But now she's in such a bad place because all she's ever wanted to do is protect those kids. And so she calls this doctor. They speak for a bit and we find out exactly how bad things have got. Even when Joe was there, she informed him that her own father had been trying to contact her because he'd seen her on TV and he was checking in from his jail cell. We know a lot about George's past, and now she's going to have to start dealing with it to get her in a better place so that she can look after her kids. But she doesn't know if she's going to jail yet. We can see how scared she is that she's fucked her kids up. But not only that, she's never going to be able to make amends for it. As for Ginny, she is now living at Zion's, obviously, and is creating all manner of havoc. She obviously doesn't want to live there. She obviously, after everything that went on, is annoyed at her father, so she is playing up as much as possible. This includes going out plenty with Wolf. They end up doing a lot of stuff in his car and making out and what have you, and each time Zion is having to call Georgia to find out where their daughter is because he doesn't have the tracking app that Georgia does. Each time she caves and she lets him know where exactly Ginny is, but she's always going to hold those cards over his head. Each time she comes home, Zion is trying to lay down the law, and she essentially says, look, you've not got a leg to stand on. You weren't there throughout my formative years. You do not get to come in now and do this. And he realises how badly he's fucked up when Ginny starts to tell him about who he has left Austin with. We know Gil's a bad guy, and we know that he's beat up Georgia in the past. We know that he was beating up Georgia when he ended up getting shot by Austin. And this is the first time that Zion is hearing any of this. And so he ends up going to speak to Paul about it. And Paul at this point is just in a place where he doesn't seem to care anymore. Everything that he knew is now out the window. He knows any potential re-election campaign is going to be scuppered by the fact that his wife potentially has killed 3 men. And she's always going to be known as the Mayoress Murderer, which is what she's been dubbed on TV. But also she dubbed herself the Mayoress before this because she wanted some sort of title, because that's who Georgia is. But like I say, Ginny is playing up. And this is affecting her relationship not only with Zion, but also with the other girls in her group. Because anytime that she goes anywhere and goes out partying or whatever, she ends up taking Braysher, or she ends up being around with Abby, or she takes Nora into the bathroom and tends to leave Max out, which obviously isn't going to go down well with Max at all. Even though when Ginny does actually go to a party with Braysher, and of course Wolf, Max is sat around in the basement where they usually hang out, and is literally just waiting for Silver to turn up. So once again we get this thing where Max wants Ginny to only have her life around Max. And it sucks, really. It really annoys me to see how much power she wants over Ginny. And I don't know if it is power per se, but she wants to continually be around her, but has to start realising that Ginny has her own life to lead. And Max isn't always going to be a part of it. She'll be a big part of it, but not the major part, as we're about to find out, because at this party, Ginny and Wolf have sex, because Ginny is just angry, and she wants to hurt her dad. She wants to lash out at the world, and when she gets home, she literally tells him, I had sex with him. That's it. And she goes off to bed. She's pissed at Zion for what he's done, and she's pissed at everything that is going on right now. As the weeks pass, we know the situation. She's literally getting bullied online because people are talking about this case, and they're talking about the fact that she knew. Georgia is getting exactly the same thing. She is getting bullied online because people say that she murdered her husbands. They even end up having a podcast about them, hosted by Paige DeSorbo and Hannah Berner. Now, I listen to those two on their Giggly Squad podcast. I find them both hilarious, and I really do enjoy that podcast. And they alluded to it this week that they were going to be on the show, and I didn't realise until I'm literally watching it and went, I know those two voices, and then realised who it was. So it was a really nice thing to actually hear those two in a different context. I love Hannah Berner's comedy, I think she's great. But anyway, the members of Meng, Max, Abby, Nora and Ginny all get together. Nora starts to tell them that she's been feeling off lately, and she knows that obviously she's got this whole thing about Ginny's mum, but she shouldn't really be punishing Ginny for that. But then she tells them that her period has been erratic for a long time, but now it's not even come whatsoever, and she's starting to get worried about it. She loves her boyfriend Jordan, but doesn't want to, in her words, have his demon spawn inside her. And so she tells the group that she's got pregnancy tests, but she hasn't done one yet. Max has the great idea to all do one at the same time, so that they can all prove together that they aren't pregnant, and they're just going to do it as a thing. They head into the bathroom, and obviously Max isn't going to be pregnant because she's gay, or there's a damn good chance that she isn't going to be pregnant. Abby, it turns out, is definitely not going to be pregnant because her and Press haven't ever done it, and Abby admits that she's never done it with anyone. Nora then confesses that her test is all clear as well. They ask Ginny, and she claims that hers is too. But she asks them for a minute in the bathroom, and then we realise the truth. Turns out that Ginny is pregnant, and of course, with the way the laws are at the minute in the US, it's probably going to mean that she can't get rid of it, if she even wanted to. So now, Ginny is going to have to go full term with this child, if indeed it stays. So this is just going to be another stress on top of her mother, her brother being with his abusive father, the fact that she's got 3 friends around her who are constantly volatile, the fact that she's been seeing this boy for about 5 weeks now, and the fact that her ex is still the person that she is in love with. So this is going to be an interesting end to this season. 4 episodes left, and I really fucking can't wait to get into them. Episode 7, That's Wild. Honestly, yeah, it fucking is. So obviously after everything that's gone on with Ginny, she's in a daze. She doesn't know what to do, and any time that she's hanging out with the girls or just anyone, she's in a world of her own. Even when Wolf comes to the school where she's at and actually comes and sits with her, she just doesn't know how to react. She isn't really bothered about introducing him to anyone and is, like I say, dazed. She is not on this planet. At this particular moment, as I'm sure most young girls would be, she just wants her mum. She knows that her mum will do whatever it takes to sort this out, whether it ends up being that she keeps the kid or whether she gets rid of it. She knows her mum, and her mum will do everything in her power to help her out. But because the trial is still ongoing and she won't be able to see her mother until after the murder trial, and then only will she be able to see her in court, because it will then be the case of whether Georgia is a fit enough mother to look after her two children. Obviously, she gets convicted of murder, that's not really going to matter. And so she feels that she can't speak to her friends because obviously she's already told them that she's not pregnant. Plus, Nora is basically rubbing it in everyone's faces that now she has got her period. And so, thank God, she isn't the one who's pregnant. So now that just makes Ginny even worse. She can't really speak to Wolf because, well, as much fun as he is fairly immature and definitely wouldn't be able to handle this situation, as he proves later on. And she can't talk to Marcus, and she doesn't feel like she can talk to her dad because she doesn't trust her dad anymore after what happened with her mother. So she has no one other than her mum, and she can't see her mum. They end up having a mediated session together, and she wants to tell her. You can see it on her face. Even her mother's asking, there's something wrong, what is it? But it gets to the end of the session and Ginny just can't come out with it because it will end up impacting against her mother as well. There is a person sat in a room from the CPS that is basically going to be judging everything that Ginny says and does. And therefore, she doesn't want to get her mother further into trouble by saying that she's pregnant. Eventually, after speaking to Max, not telling her what's going on, but speaking to her, Max comes up with a plan. She knows that she can get Ginny into the house, but she needs to distract the press. And so Max, being Max, ends up putting on a little play. We know that she's been cast in a play in school, and she ends up playing out the scene that she has to play in this stage production and distracting the press from seeing Ginny go into the house. Obviously, if it is reported that Ginny is going into the house, that is going against the terms that has been set out by the court. But at this point, there's only one person who knows that Ginny is pregnant other than Ginny, and that is Wolf. So after one of her poetry classes, she actually caught up with him and said, by the way, I'm pregnant. And he's the one who takes the award for the title of this episode, because he says that's wild. He then apologises a bunch and he can't rightly get his words out and he isn't sure what to do and he kind of stumbles over himself. He tends to be quite confident in the way that he is in his own weirdness, but right now he doesn't know what to do. He makes an excuse and gets in his car and drives off, leaving Ginny in this state where she just needs someone to talk to. We see a depressing scene before she actually manages to get to see her mother, where she's sat in her room and Zion comes to talk to her. He tries to find out what's been going on and she just seems to get smaller and smaller on screen. Like literally she is sat with her knees up to her chest and still it feels like she is trying to internalize herself, like make herself so small that nobody can see her. And it's so well acted and such a good scene, but just seeing how tiny Ginny is trying to make herself just shows how bad she feels right now. Thankfully she isn't burning herself, but hopefully that doesn't come. And so when she sees Georgia, they talk about what's been going on. She obviously tells her mother about Wolf and the fact that he is definitely not the person that she thought he was. And Ginny ends up taking another pregnancy test just to prove to her mother that she is absolutely sure that she is pregnant. Straight away, Georgia jumps into action. She says, do you want to keep it or not? And Ginny knows that as great as her mum has been to her, she knows that she can't do exactly what her mother did. She can't keep this child and look after it at 16 and be the person that her mother was. It's just not in her purview. She wants to do a lot of other things with her life. And so her mother instantly just calls up a clinic and gets her booked in. And look, I'm not exactly happy with the way things are going right now in the US. That is how it should be done. Sorry to any US listeners, but that is how it should be done. If a woman wants to get rid of, they should be able to. And I don't care what anyone else thinks. So Ginny ends up going to this clinic, and Georgia is such a menace. She knew earlier on in the episode that she could get into Ellen's lawn before her ankle bracelet went off, but that also means that she knows that she can get into Marcus's room without the ankle bracelet going off, and so she heads over to see him. She tells him, look, I know you're still in love with my daughter, and she is in a bad place right now. Georgia asks him to go over and help her, just be there for her, because Georgia can't, and he agrees to. And then they end up spending the day together and seem to really get on, like old times. And it's a shame to see these two constantly struggling with this relationship because it seems so easy. So after everything that's gone on, Georgia has managed to keep the press away from the house and manages to get Ginny to come over after everything that happened. Ginny goes through the procedure, she's taken all the tablets that she needs, and she just stays with her mom. Turns out, however, not only is the press all over this, some sort of bad daytime Hallmark movie has been made about Georgia, and I think 2 lines from it are fucking brilliant, because Georgia sees herself in her wedding dress and she says, oh my god, they made me trashy. And then they show her kids, and both of them are white and blonde, and obviously Ginny is mixed race, so instantly she just looks at the screen and goes, they made me white. And I just found it so funny. It's such a great line, because of course they would, because that's how people want to view this fucking relationship, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Ginny stays with her mom until Zion comes over to pick her up, and then once he sees how badly his daughter is doing, he manages, at least I think, to see that he needs to start working with her mother again. It's going to be hard, but they need to support Ginny at this crucial stage of her life. She's all over the place, bless her. But of course, Zion does have to protect his daughter. I understand that. But then we realise that Paul is going to be coming over to the house. He's spoken to Nick, and Nick has told him the plan. The plan is to ensure that Georgia knows about the divorce that is coming, and that he politically just has to step away from all of this to save his name, to save his mayorship, and ensure that when the election comes back round again, he doesn't get voted out. His name's been dragged through the mud through this whole thing, and it's only going to get worse. So he has decided that he is going to split away from Georgia. However, as soon as he rings Georgia and tells her that he's going to come over and they're going to talk, Georgia has a panic attack. And it's only after a while, when she's managed to calm herself, that she spies something in the bin. And as soon as I saw what it was, I audibly went, fucking no, Georgia. No, you can't do this. To an empty room, as I am now. But I cannot believe what is coming next. So Paul comes over to tell Georgia that they need to take steps to have this divorce. But Georgia interjects and tells him that she's pregnant. And so now, where is he going to go? What is he going to do? But we've got 3 episodes to find out what the hell's going on when it comes to Georgia and Paul. So it's going to be an intense ride for the next 3 episodes, at the very least. But I'm really enjoying this season so far. Like, as soon as Ginny found out she was pregnant, I literally went, oh god, not another one. Where it's going to be the young girl ends up being pregnant and ends up having to carry it to term. And it frustrated me thinking about another teenage mom and the cycle repeating, because I just think it's a worn out trope now. So I'm kind of glad that they didn't do it. The subversion of Georgia telling Paul that she was pregnant, now I didn't see that coming either, and yeah, that shocked me. I should have seen it, because she is very manipulative, but it was only when that pregnancy test was in that trash can that I realised what was going to happen. But yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying this season. One story that I haven't managed to fit into any of the commentary, because it's very separate from all of it, is Abby. It seems that Abby is having a developing relationship with one of Marcus's friends, and it's kind of nice to see Abby actually smiling. I've seen her in a few films now as well, and she always ends up playing a character that is in jeopardy. So she's constantly in a moody kind of role, and it's quite sad to see her playing this trope. But now she's actually smiling, and she's actually seems to be enjoying life. And it seems like this person that she's interested in, she's starting to get feelings for. And it's nice to see Abby actually happy for a change, because she's had so much shit going on for such a long time. As for the rest of the group, I don't know what's going on with Nora, but obviously she's having problems with the fact that Georgia has killed Tom, which you can understand, surely. But it's a little frustrating that she's not standing by her friend and going with what people are saying about Georgia. Max, however, is jealous of anyone who comes into contact with Ginny, and it's getting a little bit tedious now. It's getting a little bit frustrating. I loved Max at first. I thought she was one of the best characters in the show because of the way that she was. She was quirky and she was odd, and I liked it. I found it endearing, but now I don't. I find it frustrating that she is so possessive of Ginny, but again, wants to live her own life, but wants to make sure that Ginny is doing exactly what Max knows she is. It frustrates me. I don't get it. I don't get why people want to have this hold over other people. It's fucking stupid. But yeah, I'm finding this season really interesting, and the fact that Joe has also started to get a little bit closer to Georgia is really interesting as well. And obviously, now with the fact that Georgia is going to claim that she is pregnant, it's going to end up backfiring because Joe's going to start to pull away again. But we will see what these next 3 episodes bring. And of course, I've seen on IMDb that there is a season 4 in the offing, so we're going to find out probably what happens in season 4 as well. But for now, I'm done. One more episode of Ginny and Georgia in 2 weeks, the finale of Zero Day next week, and then back to Ginny and Georgia for the finale of season 3, and then we'll be on to several other things. So I'm done for today. So I thank you so much for listening, and until next time, I will speak to you soon. Bye. As always, thank you for listening to this podcast, and you could really help me and the podcast by giving a like, share, subscribe on all major platforms that you listen to podcasts on. As an independent podcaster, this will just help me exponentially when it comes to actually doing more things with this podcast. I truly do enjoy this, and I absolutely love revisiting these TV shows with you guys. So any engagement from you is always welcome, and I will try and listen to all of you when you give suggestions or just tell me what you think about the podcast. But once again, thank you for listening, and until next time, I will speak to you soon. Bye.